Nestled at the edge of a vast, unexplored wilderness lay the village of Hollow Creek. The village was small and quaint, a peaceful haven for its inhabitants, but a shadow lingered over the village. This shadow was cast by the imposing presence of the shadow forest, a place of dread and mystery. Villagers spoke of the forest in hushed tones, their voices laced with fear and superstition. The forest, they said, was cursed. Legends spoke of ancient spirits guarding the forest. They whispered of a darkness that consumed anyone foolish enough to enter. Over time, the forest became forbidden territory. A silent agreement kept the villagers away. Generations passed, and the stories of the shadow forest evolved into chilling tales. These tales were told to warn children and frighten strangers. The forest remained untouched, shrouded in an eerie silence. Hollow Creek was a place where time seemed to stand still. The villagers lived simple lives, tending to their farms and livestock, and gathering in the village square to share news and stories. The village was surrounded by lush meadows and rolling hills, but the dark forest loomed ever present in the background, a constant reminder of the unknown. Despite the beauty of their surroundings, the villagers could never fully escape the sense of unease that the forest brought. It was as if the forest had a life of its own, watching and waiting. The villagers' fear was palpable, and it was reflected in their daily routines and traditions. The shadow forest was dense and dark, with towering trees that seemed to touch the sky. Mist often clung to the forest floor, adding to its eerie atmosphere. The forest was a place where light struggled to penetrate and shadows danced in the corners of one's vision. The villagers' fear of the forest was not unfounded. There were countless stories of those who had ventured into the forest, never to return. These tales were passed down from generation to generation, each one more terrifying than the last. The fear and superstition surrounding the forest were deeply ingrained in the villagers' psyche. It was a fear that was taught from a young age, a fear that was respected and never questioned. The legends of the ancient spirits that guarded the forest were as old as the village itself. These spirits were said to be the protectors of the forest, ensuring that no harm came to it. But they were also vengeful, punishing those who dared to enter their domain. The darkness that consumed those who entered the forest was said to be a manifestation of the spirit's wrath. It was a darkness that was all-encompassing, swallowing everything in its path. As a result, the forest became a place of fear and mystery, a place that was best left alone. The villagers knew better than to venture into the forest, and they made sure that their children knew it too. The silent agreement to stay away from the forest was a pact that was never broken. It was an unspoken rule that everyone followed, a rule that kept them safe. The stories of the shadow forest were a part of the village's culture. They were told by the elders, passed down through the generations, and shared around the fireplace on cold, dark nights. These tales served as a warning to the children, a reminder of the dangers that lurked just beyond the village's borders. They were also a way to keep the memory of the forest's dark history alive. The forest remained untouched, shrouded in an eerie silence. It was a place where time stood still, a place that was both feared and respected. The shadow forest was a constant presence in the lives of the villagers, a reminder of the unknown that lay just beyond their doorstep. John, a young man full of spirit and skepticism, scoffed at the tales. He dismissed them as mere folklore. How could a forest, a place of trees and earth, hold such power? He refused to believe in the curses or the spirits. John longed to unravel the truth behind the legends. He was determined to prove that the shadow forest was nothing more than an ordinary woodland. His skeptical heart was set on adventure. He craved the thrill of the unknown. John decided he would venture into the heart of the forest. He would spend a night there, alone. He would return with proof that the stories were nothing more than elaborate fictions. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across Hollow Creek, the forest seemed to come alive with an eerie glow. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, creating a stark contrast against the darkening woods. John prepared meticulously for his expedition. He packed a knapsack with a blanket, a lantern, and a few essential provisions. Each item was carefully chosen, reflecting his anticipation and the gravity of his journey. His heart thumped with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Ignoring the pleas of his worried neighbours, who warned him of the dangers that lay ahead, John steeled himself for the unknown. John bid farewell to the village, his resolve unwavering. He stepped into the darkening woods where a strange stillness enveloped him. The air grew heavy, thick with an unnatural silence. The usual forest sounds, the chirping of crickets and rustling of leaves, were absent. The deeper John ventured, the darker the forest became. The trees, ancient and gnarled, loomed over him, their branches intertwining to block out the last rays of sunlight. An unsettling feeling crept over John, a sense of being watched. Every step he took seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying his isolation. The path ahead was uncertain, but John knew there was no turning back now. He could feel eyes on him, hidden in the shadows, observing his every move. The forest, with its ancient secrets and hidden dangers, was alive, and John was now a part of its story. John pressed on, his lantern casting an eerie glow that danced with the shadows. He told himself it was just his imagination. But the forest seemed to close in around him. The air grew colder, sending shivers down his spine. Then he heard it. A whisper, faint and indistinct, seemed to slither through the trees. John stopped, his heart pounding. He swiveled his head, trying to pinpoint the source. The whisper came again, closer this time, a breath of air against his ear. It spoke his name. "John," it hissed. Panic welled up inside him. His grip on the lantern tightened. He quickened his pace, desperate to escape the whispers that now seemed to surround him, taunting him. John stumbled through the darkness, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He just wanted to get out. He tripped over a gnarled root and fell. As he scrambled to his feet, his blood ran cold. A pair of hands, skeletal and pale, shot up from the ground in front of him. He recoiled in horror, scrambling back. They grasped at his ankles, icy fingers brushing his skin. John kicked out wildly, scrambling away from the grasping hands. More hands emerged from the earth, reaching for him, their touch sending chills down his spine. John knew then that the stories were true. The shadow forest was alive. Blinded by terror, John ran. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to escape the horrors of the forest. As he burst into a clearing, he stopped, his chest heaving. The whispers ceased. The grasping hands were gone, but the silence was short-lived. A figure emerged from the darkness. It was tall and skeletal, its eyes burning with an eerie green light. This was the source of the whispers, the ruler of the grasping hands. This was the Lord of Shadows. John was frozen in place, his blood turning to ice in his veins. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. The Lord of Shadows advanced, its skeletal hands outstretched, moving with an eerie grace that sent shivers down the spine of anyone who dared to look. The darkness around it seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if the very shadows were alive and hungry. John closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing like a drum in the silence of the night. He could feel the cold breath of the Lord of Shadows on his skin, a chilling reminder of the fate that awaited him. A cold wind swept through the clearing, rustling the leaves and carrying with it the scent of decay. The trees seemed to whisper secrets to one another, their branches swaying as if in mourning for the soul about to be lost. John felt a searing pain, a bone-chilling cold that seemed to consume him. His breath came in ragged gasps as the icy tendrils of the Lord of Shadows wrapped around him. Then, silence. The forest stood still, as if holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable end. The next morning, a search party from Hollow Creek ventured into the forest. They moved cautiously, their flashlights cutting through the early morning mist. Each step was taken with trepidation, the weight of the previous night's events heavy on their minds. They found John's belongings, his lantern, his knapsack, scattered haphazardly on the forest floor. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only these remnants of his presence, and a single shoe lying abandoned in the middle of the clearing. But John was gone. There was no sign of a struggle, No trace of where he might have gone. It was as if the forest had swallowed him whole. He was never seen again. The clearing stood empty, a silent witness to the night's events. The forest, once a place of beauty, now seemed ominous and foreboding. The villagers returned, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and sorrow. They had hoped to find John, to bring him back to the safety of the village, but now they had to face the harsh reality of his disappearance. The shadow forest had claimed another victim. Its dark reputation grew, the tales of its malevolence spreading further with each passing day. The story of John's disappearance spread like wildfire. Whispers of the Lord of Shadows and the cursed forest filled the air, each retelling more terrifying than the last. It served as a chilling reminder of the forest's dark power. The villagers knew that the forest was not to be trifled with, its secrets too dangerous to uncover. The villagers of Hollow Creek never again doubted the legends of the Shadow Forest. The stories they had once dismissed as mere folklore now held a terrifying truth. They lived in the shadow of the woods, forever haunted by the whispers of the wind and the chilling tale of John, the non-believer. The forest's dark presence loomed over them, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked within.